recording now. So yesterday we spent thinking about working with people in one-on-one relationships, right? Building trust and respect and managing workloads and professional growth, right? Through setting goals together, delegating appropriately, and finding professional development opportunities and coaching them. We also saw yesterday how many of the concepts we have introduced all come together when thinking about manager-direct report relationships, and also communicating up or communicating down, active listening, providing feedback, and situational leadership. Okay, so today we're going to talk about building the team dynamic, and we will cover the following topics. And I'm going to put those in the chat. So we're going to talk about how to understand the life cycle of teams development, the impacts on your management strategies, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and lastly, how to apply situational leadership to teams. Okay, so we're going to cover those 3 things today. Before we move on, any questions from what we covered yesterday? I know when we were talking about some things that haven't been covered that we want to go into, one of the topics was time management. And time management sometimes can really get away from us most of the time. We have a lot going on, but we really need to take the time out, in my experience, as we're trying to see how to build our staff skills and also delegate tasks. That's a good way to help us with time management as far as like what can really come off our plates that we feel like we don't need to control, or we could definitely start setting and training someone up, or someone might have the skills in our team to help us with that task. And they're learning some new skills or improving some skills, and then something else comes off our plate. So it's very helpful. One of the many approaches to time management. The other one is setting blocks of time. If you have that flexibility to just focus on targeted work and follow your to-do list if you have some. And the other one is also doing a list of all the things that you've accomplished the day before, so that you do understand that you are spending time on things that matter. Maybe not big things like most of us think about, but definitely things that needed to get done, right? But that also helps you realize what might be able to be delegated to someone else in the team. So it's a little bit of reflection and taking that time to do so to get yourself organized. And we will share probably some other tips on time management as we progress to the last 2 days of the training. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a slide. Do that. All right, so now we're going to talk about Tuckman stages of group development. So today we're going to see how all this applies to the team levels after all the teams are just a group of individuals, right? So all these personalities coming together, it's what's forming our teams. It turns out that when you put a group of people together, you get to see different and predictable dynamics that get to happen in the team. So we called it a life cycle. Bruce Tuckman laid out the stages of team development, looking at a cycle of how teams form and mature over time. So the first stage is forming. That's when the team members first come together. There's limited eye contact, there's limited interaction, people are getting to know each other, it's a new team, kind of like the first day at a new job, right? You're excited but nervous, you don't know who's in the room, you're trying to get everyone together. You're also trying to understand your role, the ground rules, what's the dynamic in this group. That's forming. And then we have storming, when your new manager comes and sets you a collective challenge to break the ice, like an icebreaker. You start communicating. A few strong personalities start emerging. Someone takes a leadership role. There are a couple who try to take charge. Some may retreat in silence and just observe, but others push back. So this is where you start seeing more of the personalities and dynamics in the team. So this is a bit of a power struggle sometimes during the cycle, and it can be very uncomfortable. right? But it's necessary because the team needs to evolve. So getting to know each other, the roles where you stand, what's important to each person to understand how you're going to work together. So in order to move from this stage, the team members must work through together and understand each other's strengths and work together to see who fits what in what role. So that is the storming stage. Then there's stage 3, the norming stage. At this stage, everyone has figured out how to work together and there's no more conflict or internal competition. Everyone understands their role and knows each other better and is more receptive to constructive feedback. So that's the norming side. Then you get to performing. That's stage 4. This is when there's cohesiveness, everyone is high performing, they're committed to the goals and the mission. Then a new task comes along, and now more trusting and open conversations happening on whose skills can be used for what. Everybody kind of self-assigns. Problems can still emerge, but they're handled in a more constructive and honest manner because they've already built a bond from the earliest stages. And the last stage, which is not on this chart, but you see the flow of the curve. You start with forming, you go down because it's all pretty and nice, so you're in even communication and relationship. Then you go down to storming because it gets a little rocky. Then you go back up to norming or performing. And then there's a last stage, which is not on this slide, but there's on this one, which is adjourning or mourning. So that's when the cycle starts again, right? That's when the project has ended. Oops, my apologies. That's when the project has ended and the new one begins, or someone in the group is leaving, someone else is joining, and people begin to mourn the losses, and the cycle starts all over again, and they're rebuilding. This is also where you debrief on how things went, what can be worked on better, how can we improve in future projects. So this is what happens when you're in the adjourning stages. Okay. So when each of the 5 stages is carried through, your group will feel more in sync and as a high functioning unit. No one is afraid to ask questions, to bring up concerns, or pose any new way of going about a certain task. Everyone can bring their whole self to the team and play their strengths and will step up and help one another when it's needed. So how do we get our teams through these stages, right? So when each of the 5 stages is carried through, your group will feel more cohesive. And the best way to do that is setting the tone. So starting to say, your group will feel more in sync. No one is afraid to ask questions, bring up concerns, or post any other way. So when you're creating your team meetings, when you're creating your agendas, making sure you have a place to put for feedback, constructive feedback on your agenda, so you're intentional. Setting ground rules about your team and your culture, that no one is more senior to ask for help. Everyone is there to help each other. There's no I in team. So start setting those type of expectations about how you want to handle. Like David shared with us, I think on the first or second day, he actually tells his team, everyone can ask a question, right? They're all good questions. So he's setting those boundaries and that foundation. So no matter who comes to that table or that meeting, they know they're going to be welcome and they're expected to participate and they're encouraged to participate as well. And also a good practice would be that at the end of your agenda or at the end of your meeting, provide some feedback. So end meetings with something insightful, something meaningful, constructive about the team. And even put it in the agenda so everyone's intentional about giving feedback. What didn't work this week? What worked this week? What can we do better? So if they see that you as a manager are setting the tone for this, then it would help them start breaking that wall and feel comfortable sharing more feedback and have open dialogue about how things are going. Okay. Also recognize your team. What are their strengths? Pairing up people or giving them tasks that they might succeed in, or having folks work together so that they can better understand and play up each other's strengths. So it's definitely takes a little bit of work, but it's just setting up good habits and good foundation in those teams. So now we're going to understand the phases of teams. So you are going to get into groups for 10 minutes to discuss, each group will be assigned one of the stages of the life cycle of a team, and you will answer the questions on page 31 of your workbook based on that team. So some teams will be, one team will be called forming, one will be storming, one will be norming, forming, and adjourning. And then you have some questions on page 31 that you will answer based on that life cycle of a group that you're in. And then you're going to come back and we're going to have, we're going to hear from your teams. So Joyce, you can take it away. So how was that? Was it easy to identify what are some traits of the phases of the stages of a life cycle of a team? Was it challenging?
I would say it was interesting. It
Great.
was interesting rather than challenging. So I started not asking anybody in my group. So we're in the group storming when we think that signs of this is like turbulence zone where people don't know each other well, and that might be the reason of conflicts because everybody wants to like find their own place in the team, and due to that fact, progress of the project may be slowed down, lacking of the progress. And then about the climate of this storming phase is we think that it's tense situation in the team because in like competition mode, to say so, and some of staff members may be in defensive mode to show it's better. And the feeling is that they might be thinking that they are not quite secured, and like so yeah, they don't the lack of knowing each other makes themselves not quite well. They might be not in comfort zone within the team. And as a manager, the last point, the last question, what can the manager do? I think that to have regular meetings on that stage to motivate the people more. And if there are some people who keep silence and sitting, just observing, to encourage them to participate more in the discussions or in the task distribution or whatever, and to make more clear tasks to clarify goals in more efficient way. So I think that's all reflection from my group. Thank you.
No, that's great. And this is what's important at this stage is that we're promoting as managers, we're promoting respect. We're promoting for everyone to listen to one another. We're encouraging, right? We're encouraging healthy dialogue. We're encouraging people to step up and take some leadership, but staying focused on the task, kind of pulling out the emotions a little bit as well, so that we can all focus on what we're all there for. So that's great. Thank you for sharing, Irene. Anybody else want to share one of the other stages?
Hey, Francesca, this
Hi,
is
Amir.
Amir. Yes, so I was with the group, I was with Hubert and Greg and Thibaut, and our phase was performing. So it was probably easier than for others. That's the dream stage. And telltale signs of the phase, we said that first of all, the work gets done. The team members are engaged. They know what their tasks and responsibilities are. They collaborate with each other without necessarily going through the manager, and they support each other. As with respect to the climate, so we thought it's like friendly, positive, peaceful. There is good cohesion between everyone. how the team members are feeling. Well, they complete each other. They believe they are successful. They feel they are really like part of a team, and they achieve goals together, and they feel confident. And how should the manager be responding to this? We thought he should simply encourage, acknowledge the successes, celebrate the achievements, foster the relationships between the teams so that the team stays stays within in that stage, and at the end distribute bonuses.
Yes, I like that last one.
Thank you.
No, this is great. And this is where the manager has to continue to make sure folks are feeling motivated, connected, and appreciated, right, for the amazing work that they're doing, because it's just going to allow them to re-engage in the work and continue to perform at that level. Awesome. And also delegate as much as possible, right? Because this is where your team is doing the best work and could take on some of their own tasks and lead them. So this is definitely where you also want to delegate as much as possible. Great. Any other groups?
So I was in the norming group, and we came up with very similar things to the performing group. So I'd be interested to hear kind of where that line is. But when we were talking about it, we were talking about like everyone is figuring out each other's roles, and you're agreeing on what the roles are. Everyone is starting to do what they're supposed to be doing. Team members are able to act more independently in what their jobs are, and you know that other team members are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So those lines are a little bit more delineated, and the work is getting done at this time. The climate is feeling a little more calm, stable, and familiar. Team members are feeling comfortable, satisfied, and supportive. And as a manager, I guess not yet at the bonus stage, but providing affirmations and some support, and providing a little bit less hands-on support.
Yeah. So the norming stage is right before, like where everybody's starting to get to know each other and feel comfortable, right before you hit that high performance, right? Where things are just flowing. Now we're just like, we all know, and we're just going along for the ride. But at this stage, you're still building on trust, right? So continuing to nurture as a manager, reinforcing the team spirit, staying involved. You cannot totally disengage yet. Some tasks can be delegated, not all, but still continue to put that level of trust and respect at this stage, right? So yeah, there is that fine line, but performing is that you finish that project and norming, everybody now knows like, hey, we did an amazing job. You take on that next one at the performing level, and everybody just knows where their role is, right? And you're just flying through it. Awesome. How about the forming group? Who was in the forming group? This is an interesting stage.
That was
a very
us.
important one. Go ahead, Lisa. Thank you.
Sure. While we were saying that, you're really in the beginning, you're trying to figuring out who will be what, and people are being kind of polite, and the introverts may feel like very tired because they're trying to give a lot, and then the extroverts also might be trying to figure out, everybody else as well. So really, it's people are getting familiar with each other. There's also both insecurity and excitement in it, and curiosity. Everybody's trying to figure out like what's happening. And I think the manager's role at that point is really, they're kind of the captain. They're steering the ship. They're giving the framework so people understand kind of what the expectations are, understanding the process. So a lot depends on the manager at that point. And, what can I do? What can't I do? And people looking to the manager when they're not certain about something. So I think the agenda, the roles, the communication are really important for the manager to communicate the roles and responsibility, because it can be a little difficult for the team if all of a sudden it's just a blank page and you got to move forward. That's
yeah, this is the foundation. Sorry, go ahead again. I'm sorry.
No, I just said if there was anything to add from my team, those were the notes.
Oh, okay, that was great. Yeah, and this is the foundation, and it's important because you want to make sure you have a good foundation. So as a manager, you have to give that direction. You have to set the tone for what kind of team you're going to lead, and how welcomed everyone is, and how what role they all should play, right? And that also we're a team. We're here for a greater good. So establishing your mission also as a team for the team and your vision, I think is very important at this stage, because then everything else builds on that, right? Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. How about the adjourning or the morning team? How was that? Who was in that team? Can't see the team list anymore. But that's also a pretty easygoing cycle. Fatma, were you saying something?
Sorry.
No,
We
it's
ended the team with Erica, Joel, and I don't know who else. Sorry, I forgot. But yeah, so we're looking at both the positive and the negative side of it. So our project is closing, or an office is closing, and staff are so uncertain about the future. So they tend to need a lot of confidence boosting from the supervisor, and also for the supervisor to share maybe job prospects out there. And if it's on a negative side, then it's a lot of, mourning and kind of feeling sad that the team is breaking away, not very sure of what the future holds. On the other positive side is that the team can use or can even reflect on the performance of the project in terms of looking at the lessons learned and how to better manage the teams in the future. So I've kind of just summarized. I hope my teammates will be able to add.
That was perfect. And you know that this is very true for a lot of the work that we do, right? We have 5-year grants, we have 2 or 3 year grants, maybe a year, maybe a year and a half. So there is that cycle that we go in a lot quicker, but those relationships and that bond is still built. We should always celebrate the success of the project and the work that we did. And that's very important during the morning stage, because as people leave a team, we should acknowledge that and celebrate that. But also as the project is coming to a close, we should also celebrate, even during the time of uncertainty, right? Some people may not be continuing with the organization, they have to find other jobs. So how do we still create that level of comfort and security, as well as dealing with the sadness and satisfaction and accomplishments of the project? So just being very aware of that. But because you've already had a good foundation, you've already built the trust, it's an easier stage to come together and be there for one another and celebrate the successes. So that's amazing. So how does hybrid or remote work impact the development of teams? So out of all these stages, how does the remote work or the hybrid work impact?
It's a forming stage. It will be a disaster for a remote work. It's like, no, it's remote might be good, but not for forming stage. I think maybe for performing and so on. It's like norming and performing. It's good, but at the early stages of the group forming, it's very difficult to accomplish properly. So maybe some temporary gathering will be a good idea at the first stage.
Yeah, so it takes a lot of effort, right? And we have to be very intentional to build that relationship and trust, and setting those expectations and be very clear, right? So everything we've kind of talked about up to now is really what we need to put into effect for the first stage of this. Thank you so much, David. Khalida, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, remotely, when you work remotely, it is not good, especially for the forming stage and storming stage as well, because like there is no eye contact, you don't know how really your staff are, and that the communication is be a bit difficult. So I think it's for the remotely, it's a bit difficult.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thibault, Thank you, Kalita.
It might be better, for the stormy stage to work remotely. Huh? At least you will not be physically harmed or injured.
It's a very physical interaction that you're expecting during that stage. But what are some suggestions for that? Go ahead, Thibault.
No, I agree. It's challenging, definitively. These two first phase when you to get to know, your teammates, your team member, at the beginning. And I'm sure, like every organization, I've tried to put in place some kind of virtual system, to create a kind of some moment or some climate where you can have some kind of informal catch-up, friendly moment where you can touch base with someone or get to know, the person.
Yeah.
But when you're a bit old school, like I am, sorry to say, not that I'm old, but it's true, it's not sometimes easy to play this kind of game, but at least I think the intention is there. So this type of virtual, coffee or some kind of virtual team building, virtual quiz, whatever. I think the organization is at least, aware of this and trying to to create some moments to build this team cohesion and to give opportunity for the staff to interact in a more fun way.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it takes time, right? It's because it has to be very intentional. So in your busy schedule as a manager, you also have to carve out time to have those one-on-ones and then have those team meetings to understand the dynamics to help them get through all these cycles. And I like what you mentioned, the team building. And yes, you could have it at the organizational level, but sometimes that might be too many layers from your team. So do consider when is the right time during the forming stage to have some team building activities and have those team building sessions. So you're getting everyone to know each other at one time, and they're also getting to know each other, and do some work activities. There's some great things that you can always look up about team building, remote type of activities, or icebreakers. I used to, every time I would have a staff meeting, when we had a lot of new people come in, I would ask someone from the team to ask a question, non-work related, something they all wanted to know. People, their favorite movie, their favorite book, their favorite activity. If the holidays were coming up, what are you doing for the holidays? Anything that would just add that level or sense of like, I want to know about you out, in addition to the work. And we could be intentional about it. So putting that as part of your agenda for all your meetings, especially at the beginning stages, creates that level of community. Millie, go ahead.
Mine is more of a question, really. Or a statement, I don't know. I wanted to say that maybe it also depends on the type of person that you are. There are, these days we are increasingly, getting people saying that they are more comfortable working from home, something that we never used to hear. And so I think it depends on the type of person you are. Some people are outgoing, sometimes some people are reserved. So, they do well, maybe, in virtual spaces, but when you meet them, they're probably shy and stuff like that. So I think these days, it really depends maybe on the kind of person you are, your type.
Yes. No, and that's a good point, right? Some folks have that layer of being on a screen or turning off their camera and then feeling a little more confident. But it's as a manager or even as part of a team, we have to sometimes come out of our comfort zones to build that bond, to build that trust, right? Whether we're remote or in person. And if we see that there's someone in our team that is a little more reserved, we should encourage them. Hey, what do you think? Tell me your thoughts on this, or how have you handled this before? instead of asking, you know, why are you quiet or why are you feeling that way, and encourage them to participate in that way. Again, it's very intentional to get everyone to open up and come together. But that is a very good point, Millie. Sometimes being virtual adds another layer of comfort, but also it adds another layer of you don't have to engage, right? Sometimes they're like, hey, there's conflict happening. Just start checking my email, tune everybody else out on that Zoom call, and then keep my day going. So we have to be intentional. We have to pay attention to see how we can pull people back and get them involved. Yes. Jamil?
Sorry, it's Joel. That's my fault.
Oh, Joel, I was like, okay, you're like.
No, I didn't put my first name. I'm gonna fix that.
Thank you.
No, one thing I wanted to say though, it's difficult to do any type of onboarding or launching when your projects are based in Africa, for example, because a lot of the projects that I work on, staff members rely on the office for good internet connection. Or just like us, for example, I'm sure we had to deal with this during all of our respective lockdowns to get away from your family, and I mean that in the best way, where, the majority of people on this call, not me, are mothers and fathers, and, kids want to be climbing on you. Just now I was on a call and one guy, his kid was showing him a horse that he drew. But what I'm trying to say is that it's very difficult to successfully launch a project remotely when you are managing projects in a place where the infrastructure isn't that of where I am, Washington, D.C. So, you even if you want to try and do the remote work, you have to find ways to meet every now and then, so team members can have access to those things, because it's hard to expect to have the same expectations for someone who's in a country where they might not have power at any given point, or even if you give them, you try to replace the internet by giving them phone cards. It's not always going to be as successful as you want it to be. So it's interesting to find alternatives to try and keep up that same success rate. That was just a comment, not a question, really.
No, but that's a good point, because that's a reality of a lot of our projects, where we are working with offices throughout the world, right? That may not have the same infrastructure or resources that we do, or just they might be going through something different. Sometimes there's political unrest, or there's a holiday, or so you have to be mindful of all these things when you are working in international teams. So that's a good point. I appreciate that. So any other thoughts or comments on life cycles of teams before we move on to the understanding the characteristics of an effective team? Awesome. So in the chat, let's get those fingers ready. Just shoot out 1 or 2 words or a statement that tells of what you think is a characteristic of an effective team. Last or no conflict. Needs that lines. Yeah, positive synergy. Members trust each other, teamwork, strong communication, pay attention. There's two-way communication. Yes, trust, big, important. Stronger together. I like that. Really playing up on each other's strengths. That's perfect. That is perfect. So this is a great list. And I'm sure we could keep going and going and going. Yep, productivity is high. But I'm going to share with you a more succinct list where it talks about a manageable list of at least 6 areas. If we had time, we could perhaps go on like a few more hours and also allocate some of the traits that you just put into some of these categories. So the internal focus of a team is the clear objectives, the good decision-making process, the trust, the cooperation, the support, and constructive conflict we don't shy away from conflict, right? It just has to be constructive, because that's how we build, that's how we get to know each other, and that's how we grow as people and as team. The next is clear roles and responsibilities and leadership. Those are all parts of the internal focus. The external focus of a team is sound relationship with other groups and team performance focus, right? So we want to make sure that there's also an analysis process of the team's performance. So what are we showing externally? That we have good, healthy relationships where it might just be respect, or we build a relationship outside of work, all right? So these are some of the categories that we can really group the effective characteristics of a team. So now I'm going to share with you let's talk a little bit about Patrick Leocini's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So to be on the watch of them and to have some strategies to tackle those challenges or dysfunctions. So there are 5 stages of dysfunctions, and you will see how they all filter up, affecting each stage. So the first stage is lack of trust in management, where the team members are reluctant to make themselves vulnerable with you, and they include sharing where they are struggling and avoiding risk to reduce the chances of failure, right? So it's the absence of trust. So they're not vulnerable with you. So the next one is fear of conflict. It leads to the sense of artificial harmony. So this is why we also welcome some conflict, which can also lead that either member, they're not constructive decisions or debates. No one is really fully engaged in the group, and that's also a problem, right? So it's artificial harmony. The third one is lack of commitment. This results in confusion around the decisions, and there's no buy-in. You may find that the team members start to agree to things that they're against, and this could then reflect later in their behavior during their work. So they're passive resistors. The next one is avoidance of accountability. By not being fully committed to the decision, they will then also not have a sense of accountability for the work to bring to a decision to action. This could lead quickly to low standards, as there's no one willing to own the work. And the last one is inattention to results. They're not committed. They don't want to be associated or accountable for the work. So they may then start to simply focus on what makes them look good and not the good of the team. So they're not bought into the team goals. So you have individuals working for their own status and success, only working on the things that they like without the things that they need to be responsible for. Okay, so we need to keep an eye on those things. So there are a few things that you can do to help mitigate this. And the first is the most fundamental piece, right? Is once your teams are working towards building trust, you can start to value others' behavior in the team. So we want to show that there's value of conflict, and this includes asking for counterpoints or looking for risks. Encourage the commitment of a group. This can be done in a party by sharing ownership. But it can be done in part by sharing ownership or encouraging accountability. You need to emphasize the benefits and also that there's a safety for the team if the team fails, and also celebrate the successes of the team. But more so than celebrate is recognize also the failures, right? We weren't great at this, but we achieved this and we did it together. So where they can have perhaps a learning party, a brown bag celebration, go over all the mistakes and celebrate the lessons learned and how much of this will help in the future to make you that high performing, that impactful team. Awesome. So then what can we do as a manager? So there's a few steps of the role the manager can play. To ask others to be vulnerable, you need to be the first to do it. So show your human side, share your concerns, and also share that you're struggling. So we're not perfect, we don't know everything, and we need help sometimes. Or sometimes we make a mistake and we need to acknowledge it. Look for those conflicting opinions and praise different ideas and views. Once those have been shared by the group, make a decision, but make it clear that the way that you consider all views. Ultimately, choices have to be made, and most people are okay with that as long as they understand how and why the decision was made. So they can disagree, but they're still respectful of your decision. Don't be afraid to call out lack of ownership by individuals or the group. Emphasize how important their individual leadership is in the process or decision making. Again, we're not shying away from the conflict, we're addressing it in a very constructive way. And then finally, recognize individual contributions, but celebrate it as a team success. This is about forming a team that will bring about a sense of community and commitment to one another. And that is why it's so important. Okay. I hope this was helpful. I know we discussed some of the other stages, but now seeing it like this, I think it brings another layer of clarity. Awesome. Any questions so far? All right. So just as you need to adapt your management style to different situations when you're managing individuals, you need to do the same when leading teams. So we are going to review the Hershey-Blanchard model. And remember, the goal is to move people and teams along the balancing between being supportive, but not micromanaging. So we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to do an activity to review the 3 case studies in your workbook on pages 33 to 35. And each team is going to have a name, the name of the case study. Your team may be called budget. So you go to the budget case study on page 33. Then there's a local needs. I think that one's on page 34. And then there's a conference on page 35. But look at your team names. And then you're going to have 20 minutes to discuss those scenarios. And I'm going to put that in the chat for the instructions. If you end early, you can go ahead and move on to the other 2 case studies so that you can also take a look. So again, we're starting on page 33 with a case study on budget. So if your team name is budget, you will be working on page 33. If your case study is local needs, you'll be working on page 34. And if your case study is conference, forthcoming conference, you will be working on page 35. And you will have 20 minutes. Any questions before we go into the breakout rooms? Awesome. Let's put all this to practice. Joyce, take it away. Welcome back. So let's hear from the group that had budget. I know there were 2 groups that had budget, group 1 and group 5. So one of the groups can go first and then the other one can add anything else.
Okay, I was in group 5 and actually that was a fun activity. I was with Millie, and I'm sorry, I have, my mind goes blank. The third person was Herbert, am I right? Okay, anyway.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay, good. So we discussed the first question. Actually, I don't know if everybody read the synopsis. It's about a manager having to resolve a budget shortfall, and she comes in a meeting and she gives everybody their assignment. And basically, for the first question, we found that her style was too directive, too authoritative. She didn't ask anyone their input. She just delegated. And people, she didn't even ask them if they were comfortable and, you know, if there were anything that they had question about what they were trying to achieve. So that kind of set a negative tone in the meeting, leaving no room for interpretation, for engagement, just getting your marching orders and period. For the next question, if you were one of the team members, how would you react? So that really depends on your personality. Some people are very comfortable just knowing, you know, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I know how to do it, fine. Other people would feel uncomfortable and kind of shortchanged because they didn't have an opportunity to voice their concern, their opinion, asking for clarification. And some people might, you know, be start conflict or, you know, kind of protest, have a reaction to that.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Sorry, shall I go on?
Yes, please go on.
Okay, the pros and the cons. I'll start with the con. It's a very problematic style because she's just focusing on the result and not on how the results are going to achieve and how our team feels about how to achieve the results. It's not engaging. So you just go about doing your work and that's it. And one of the consequences is that people will not be really committed and won't really care about the result at the end.
Right.
And the pro is that she probably will achieve her end goal by directing people, but that's all she will have achieved.
Yeah.
So you need to care about people too.
It's a balance, right?
Yeah.
People and work.
Last question, how else might the manager have approached a problem? It's by engaging your team, you know, explaining what the project, you know, what we're trying to achieve, propose a course of action, and then ask for people input. And ask also, you know, even if she decides that, because she knows, obviously she knows her team, even if she decides that, you know, so-and-so will do marketing, so-and-so will do recruiting, also make sure that people are comfortable. And maybe some people, you know, are able to chip in other aspects of the project. So really engaging people so that they feel they have buy-in in the project and that they will be committed to achieve the result.
Great. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. How about team number 1 that also had budget? Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I wanted just to point out that, yeah, everything seemed like this is not a good approach according to what we've been studying. There is no forming, there is no opportunity given to participants to form and engage on the project. But I think there's some style of some industry that use that kind of orders, like in army, like people receive just orders and instruction, and they, you know, I know it's not maybe the best approach. This is in our industry, and we put people first, and we engage people to make a successful result. But I want just to point out that maybe that approach may work somewhere. And also, I want also to think that the pro of this is that maybe Chris may get the result in quicker than maybe going through the forming and the storming of the team. If he knows the strength and the expertise everybody's bringing on the task that he's providing them, maybe he's saving time. But I fully agree that I will not use that approach. I just want to be provocative here.
No, but you know, that's a very good point, because maybe when there is a time of a high emergency, maybe when there's a time crunch in the timeline, we don't have time to be so inclusive, right? We have to just make an executive decision and go. So there could be those times where this approach might be the best way to go. However, if there is no sense of urgency, right? And there isn't a sense of everything is going according to plan and everything can be more of a cohesive approach, this is where you might want staff to feel consulted versus directed, right? Especially if you're trying to think of all the stages of the team, you want to get from forming to storming to high performing. You're probably not going to get to high performing with a new team if all you're telling them is you're just giving them direction. And the same thing with staff as an individual. You're not going to get them through the curve of being a coach or just having less directive if you're always just telling them what to do. So agree with you 100%, Hubert, that at times we might just need to make an executive decision and tell people what to do. But when there is not that sense of urgency, or our work or our organization is not like that, the better approach is that to present the problem and invite a discussion for potential solutions. Because in this case, we're trying to get buy-in, we're trying to get ownership, and we want people to come along with us and do high performance, right? But I do agree. I appreciate you pointing that out, that you might just have to roll with it. And that's totally correct. So I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, how about the group that had the local needs?
I will just tell
sorry, go
the
ahead,
short story for that. What the case was. The case is that the manager goes into the room to the regular meeting, and he's going to discuss with the team that there is a need of have a survey, and that he has some ideas already, and he would discuss his idea first, and then ask the room to share his idea, and then he will discuss these ideas, and after they will not have a final outcome of this meeting as a decision, but he will collect all of the ideas and get back to the team with the final decision and the plan to implement. In this case, at first, it seems that the person is very open and please give me your idea, but it's not the case, because he is expressing his idea first. And he is making the call that I will collect ideas and give you my feedback. I will make the decision and plan on my own. So also in the synopsis, it is indicated the person wants to ask idea around the table, person by person, without giving them the proper description of the problem. And it is not inclusive, and it is not it creates a lot of confusion, but because not all of the members would be able to shoot the ideas at the place when they have just heard the idea. They just heard the fraction of the information that they are responding. So it is really, it's there like at the gunpoint. So please give me your idea. So it's discourages them to participate and generate any good ideas. Our reaction, one of the options, to generate idea if possible, and ask the follow-up questions from the team members' perspective, because there is a lack of the information. The cons of this approach is that there will be this does not generate the respect, loss of trust, and discourage from persons to participate. But there is some cases that it might be a good, because the manager is pushing them to participate. Some of the team members, it might be a good to push them, but some of them not. And it might work in a less skilled environment, when the people around the table don't have enough qualification or don't have less experience in the surveys, to say so. What we would do as a good practice, we would share the problem and prepare the room. We will share information beforehand, earlier during the day or earlier 2 days ago, just to give them the proper understanding what the problem is. We will not share our idea first, because for some people, and for it might be like that he already thought about that, he has his idea, so it doesn't matter whether I will share mine or not. So it's very discouraging. And also include the staff members into the final decision and planning, because yes, he is a manager, he might make a final call, but involving staff members into the planning process is crucial for them to commit to the action and to commit to the final outcome of the activity. Yeah, that's all. in short.
No, that's great. So he was just like a checklist. I checked with staff. That's kind of what he was doing versus being genuine about the consultation. And again, sometimes we want feedback from our staff so then we can make the best decision. But if we're trying to build the team and we're trying to move them through these stages, then we do want that buy-in. We do want them to feel like they're part of the team. So thank you, David. And I know we have 1 minute left, so we're going to try to make this quick with the conference folks. If you can give me some points.
I just need 1 minute. So basically the manager
Thibault.
is giving very vague instruction to just one member of his team, just telling him, you know, please, you need to organize a conference. Please work with this guy, and this guy. We feel that he was a bit exclusive in his relationship, you know, with the other UC staff. That he gave responsibility to organize, the conference, and basically did not really care about what will follow, next. You see how the work will be, distributed. So we feel very excluded, and then a bit distant with the, the conference that need to be organized. We could take it as a full delegation. That at least he trusts, this member of the team, but we had the impression that he was, not so much and just giving the full thing to this person and didn't care about really what will follow, next. We feel that some team members might feel extremely frustrated about it, will not be really motivated. We feel that the manager is not really fair. I mean, as a pro, we can feel that at least he's trusting one person in his team, but definitively the cons it's a very exclusive relationship, and we don't feel that he's engaging his entire team to make sure that this conference will be a team effort. And what should be the other approach? We feel that at least he should have given more clearer instruction, to the staff on the way he should distribute, the work. He should do the coordination and the planning, or and we feel that it would be even a better option, really engage with the entire team to be at least there for the initial planning, to make sure that things will be smooth between the different members, of the team.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we have to be careful sometimes not to exclude other members of the team. I think we can kind of get some buy-in, some roles and responsibilities, but let's be careful also sometimes not to be exclusive, because then that seems like we're giving preferential treatment, right? And then that creates issues within a team dynamic. So real quick, I know we're over by 2 minutes, and I appreciate you. We covered a lot today, but right before you go, if you can just give me some thoughts on the chat on one thing you will do or change with my team is, could be a word or phrase. Yes, Fanny, I know. Sorry. Thank you so much. I know we weren't over. So one thing you will do or change. Engaging. Engage more. Yes. Especially in these virtual settings, right? Where we can all just be little hermit crabs and not feel connected. More transparent with decisions. Yes. Clear division of roles and more discussion. Yes. Engaging, set clear objectives, more meetings, but meaningful and purposeful meetings. We just don't want to add a bunch of meetings. Everybody always says that they have too many meetings. So we got to be strategic about those. And they don't have to be very long either. We can get creative. Awesome. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate your time, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Continue to be in the